Hello, everyone. Welcome to an episode of the Circle of Hope podcast. My name is Valerie Hope. I am your host. And this is a wonderful podcast because it provides me the opportunity to have meaningful conversations with people that help me thrive and grow, right? We talk about the connections that we make that also help my guests thrive and grow. My guest today is none other than Shawn SP2 Paynemiller II. Shawn, you were very very adamant that you had to rewrite your whole name on Zoom so that you could fit that SP2 in there. And mind you, you don't go by Junior, you go by the second. This is like a whole thing. So we can get into it in a minute, but I want to just tell people how you and I know each other, and then we can talk about you didn't introduce yourself as Shawn SP2 Miller, by the way. It was just now here in the Zoom. But you and I have known each other for about 2, maybe 3 years now. When we met through a mutual connection at Hyatt, I was a speaker at an event. And then you probably, I think you chased me down. You literally, I think, chased me down to have a conversation about an idea that you had that you wanted to put into the world, which I noticed you have, you tend to be a visionary in so many ways. And when you have an idea and you see something that you think could help move the idea forward, you go for it. And that's kind of how we got acquainted. And ever since then, I've had some opportunities to partner with you on several projects. But more importantly, I think for you, as I've had these conversations, you've expressed and you expressed an interest in doing more speaking and eventually doing a TED Talk. And as we were having a conversation about that, I was like, well, you should be on my podcast. Not because this might lead you to TED Talk. I can't promise that part. But I do think that you have amazing ideas. Again, you're a visionary, and when it comes to how you see the world working and what you wanted to do for other people. Master connector. I think I've seen you do that time and time again, not only with me, but also the people around you. And I thought that would be an excellent opportunity to highlight an area of your life that is a gift, I think, for so many of us. So welcome to the podcast, Shawn.
Thank you so much for having me. And to be clear, it is not SP2, it's SP squared. Look, I have to
Wow.
put some finance in there.
Speak
Um,
square. Got
yes,
it.
but interestingly enough, I actually did not fully embrace my name until I got later in high school.
Okay.
It was one of those things that I realized as long as my name wasn't a huge fan of it, it was something different. So I just kind of made it what it was. So SP squared, here it is.
Why not junior? Most people that are the second go by junior, not the
Um,
second. Why is that?
Interestingly enough, when I was born, I actually wasn't born as the second either. It
Oh,
wasn't until later that my name got changed in life. And I'll never forget asking, like, why wasn't I a junior? And my family told me, it was like, well, juniors and seniors don't get along. That's why we didn't do it. I was like,
what?
okay, now as an adult, I look back on that as, can someone show me the data and the statistics that actually prove this point? Because it felt like something somebody said on the corner one day, like, let me tell you about this. That's what it felt like.
Hmm.
So
Okay, so
now
juniors and
it just
seniors.
kind of stuck.
All right. But your father is named Shawn is a thing. Okay.
Absolutely.
It was just the idea of saying senior or junior that would create a rift in the family,
Uh,
potentially.
what's I think really funny is to this day, on my father's side of the family, I'm still known as Little Sean.
Okay.
I am 6'3" and 200 and none of your business pounds. And I'm still known as Little Sean, and my father is probably like 5'9", 5'8".
Okay. All
I'm like,
right.
I think we need to rewrite this narrative.
That's okay. It sounds like you've taken a lot of liberties in writing narratives in the family, so
Absolutely. I own what I want to be, not what you choose to call me.
cool. All right, so that aside, I definitely will go by the second and SP squared, obviously. So you mentioned finance. So this is a world that you swim in. You are a vice president of finance. So it's something that you have been recently embracing or continuing to embrace over the years.
No, recently embraced. So before that, I was the regional vice president of finance for
Yeah.
Latin America and the Caribbean. So they took the guy from Brooklyn who speaks Spanglish and threw him
Mhm.
down into 14, 15 different countries in Latin America and the Caribbean. And it was probably the greatest thing that ever happened. Learning
Mhm.
empathy, understanding really how to navigate like cross-cultural things.
Mhm.
Too often we think we know everything, but I think the greatest thing about this job is I found out how big the world really is and
Yeah.
how small my problems really seem in comparison.
Interesting.
Recently was promoted to Vice President of Finance
Congrats.
for all the Americas, so thank you so much. Very different journey,
Yeah.
navigating politics at a very different level, but enjoying the fact that despite the politics, despite everything else, I get to help people at a bigger capacity. So
Mm.
that's kind of the thing that really excites me about this,
That's
despite the
very
headaches,
cool.
but I enjoy that part.
Yeah. Well, I think the cool thing, and I'll share with people just a tad because I used to work for Hyatt for many years, right? I've worked for the Hyatt Corporation, and that's who you work for. And I've been so grateful to have opportunities to partner with you because it still feels like I'm part of it. And there's something about you. You came from a different organization prior to coming to Hyatt, and I'm curious. Look, Hyatt's not sponsoring this episode or any of those things, but I just want to be transparent with people rather than like the company we worked for. I don't want to go into that,
Yeah.
but there's something about connections and the sense of fraternity that I would describe happens in an organization like Hyatt. And I'm wondering if that happened to you when you came in from another company into this to Hyatt. What was it like as far as the relationships that you build, the connections and network, and what you've observed in the Hyatt versus other experiences you've had professionally?
I will say, when I first joined Hyatt, it was probably at the worst time you could ever join any company. I
Oh.
get the offer letter on Martin Luther King Day in 2020. I
Mhm.
start the first week of February in 2020, and we all know the rest. So now I'm in a situation
COVID,
where,
in case somebody's like, what
yes,
happened?
COVID, if you didn't know
COVID
what
happened
happened.
like a month later.
And
Okay.
I'm in New York at this point. So I'm
Got
in
it.
New York, COVID happens. I
Yeah.
literally just moved into an apartment. And now I have to navigate, okay, I still don't quite know everything. I need to figure it out. I barely found where the bathroom was in the hotel.
Mm,
Everything is shutting down, and I have to navigate that. So I never really got the ability to make those relationships right away.
interesting.
I think one of the best things that happened to me is during orientation of all places. I'm sitting down and someone in HR, were kind of laughing. They asked me, "Where are you going to church on Sunday?" I was like, "Well, pastor in Chicago suggested such and such, so I'm going to head over." They said, "Okay, I'm going to meet you there." After church, just kind of having a chat, and they're like, "My mother works for Hyatt in finance. I should connect you guys." That one connection honestly led to everywhere else because I didn't know anyone to call somebody in New York. At this point, I'm cold calling. Everybody's going through the same struggle. And
Yeah.
the only benefit I had was that one person who said, let me connect you to my mom. So luckily enough, that person has really been an anchor for me and
Mm,
a place where I can ask these crazy questions. And it's hilarious that I'm now the vice president of finance. This person is in one of the regions that reports up to me, and I still talk to this person on a regular basis because I'm not sure I would have made it if I didn't have that one person to just
yeah.
really, oh, look over here. Because it
Yeah.
wasn't that I needed help with the accounting of it.
Hmm.
I didn't really need help with the processes. It was like, hold on. From the company I worked at, this would have been this. So help me understand what this term is for Hyatt.
Mm.
So one person once said, "Oh, just look on Paul." And the exact phrase I said after is, "My grandfather's been dead for years. I don't know who Paul is. Where am I supposed to go?" And they started laughing and saying, "Okay, click this button." I was like, "Oh, thank you." In hospitality, we have nothing but acronyms.
It's acronym. So PAW is an
So
acronym for a finance tool or platform. Got it.
absolutely. So that was one of the big things that helped me. So I think my the relationships I formed were very organic, but very,
Okay.
very much through turbulence. But I
Wow.
think those are the relationships that have lasted and have helped me grow throughout my career. But outside of that, of the Hyatt bonds I've joined and formed, I'm a member of NABA, the National Association of Black Accountants.
Hmm.
I think the thing I love the most about going to the convention at NABA is I found out very quickly I wasn't alone. Too often, being a person of color, working in finance, you don't find many people who are like you,
Mm.
especially in big organizations. So to go to NABA and you're around CFOs, managing directors, partners who of these big organizations, and you find out you're not by yourself.
Yeah.
I'm a graduate of a historically black college, Tuskegee University. One of the greatest this side of heaven. I said what I said, and I stand by it. Take it for what it is. But I felt that same utopia in Tuskegee. And as an adult, when you leave college, sometimes you lose that utopia. And NABA was one of those places I rediscovered it and I felt it again.
Mm,
And it was great that I was able to start building those same relationships, even professionally outside of NABA, inside
yeah.
my own organization in Hyatt.
Fascinating. So there's so many things I want to tease from this. One, I just want to highlight the fact that you, in a time where the world was really shutting down and closing in, made a connection with somebody in an orientation. Was it in person or virtual?
It was in person.
It was in
That was
person. So
before,
there was,
remember,
this
the
is
virtual
before the
stuff.
shut down, right? February.
Yes,
But that you made a connection in that moment in time that led you to someone's mom who led you to an opportunity within the company that now you had, you've now expanded your role and your expertise. So I think that's one thing to note. Obviously, it was in the beginning of the pandemic, maybe before all the things started to get a little bit crazier, but I
absolutely.
love those kind of connection stories. I also came about connecting with Hyatt in a very similar way, working for the chamber here in Dallas, Texas. And I used to be the person that received job openings from other corporations in Dallas in my job at the chamber. And the chamber we had a committee, a workforce committee, and had a meeting at the Hyatt. It was hosted by the employment manager there. And that was a nice connection that we built. And I'm like, well, just share your job openings with us and we'll send them out to the community. And one day, the one time that I was just like, let me double click on this attachment. Because I was starting to get a little restless, ready for the next thing. And I'm like, well, this seems like a really nice company. I love the people that I've gotten to meet there. And I opened the attachment and it said training manager. So I was able to pick up the phone and go, hey, Lisa, I just noticed this. What's up? And so she invited me for an interview and the rest is history. So 14 years of career in a company because I double clicked on an email and I had a connection that I can just pick up the phone. So I want to just call out that these connections don't always happen because someone's going through LinkedIn and someone is applying to all the open positions. It's because you had a conversation with someone and that person connected with you on church, like you were going to church. That wasn't even like work related conversation. So love
Not at
that.
all.
Love
Well,
that.
I'll take it a step further. Maybe
Yeah.
4 or 5 years before that, I was actually a speaker at NSMH, the National Society of Minorities in Hospitality, and it
Uh-huh.
was at the Hyatt Regency in Crystal City. I'm working
Oh.
for another company at this
Mhm.
moment, and the general manager, who was also the area vice president, walked up to my table while I'm eating, and we just had a random chat. So I'm thinking, okay, you're just being a GM, and you're doing everything on the checklist.
GM,
Had a
general
great
manager.
we're having this great conversation. He's like, you should really consider coming to join Hyatt. And I thought nothing of it. The
Mm.
pandemic happens, and there's this email that comes out every quarter of all the new general manager hires or promotions or transfers. And I
Yes.
see his name on there. And I
Ah,
send him a message like, hey, not sure if you remember me, but a few years ago, blah, blah, blah.
full circle.
And he said he did remember me. I think what's really interesting is about a year and a half, maybe year and a half after I joined Hyatt, I moved into a higher role as the regional vice president. And I sent him a note saying, hey, can we talk? This is before the announcement was public. I was like, I just wanted to talk to you. I made a decision. I wanted to share it with you. And so we get on the call, and he said, just so you know, Shawn, I prepared 2 speeches for today. I was like, okay. So then I tell him what happened. He's like, okay, I don't need this one. And he talks about congratulations. I was like, well, what was the other speech? I thought you were going to quit. So I wanted to make sure I had a speech ready to tell
Oh,
you why you should stay.
oh, wow.
So he had a congratulations because he's like, it could be something good, but if it's bad, I have a speech to talk you into staying.
The talk, the negotiating speech.
Oh,
Interesting. Okay.
exactly. And I think what's so amazing when you look at him specifically, his name is Derek Morrow. He's currently the general manager, area vice president of the Hyatt Regency Atlanta. The Hyatt
Shout
Regency
out.
Atlanta is the House of Hope. And
Mm.
it's known for that because it was the
Not the
hotel that
circle of
opened its
hope, the
doors.
house of hope.
Yes, or the Hotel of Hope, rather. And I
Huh.
think that what's so amazing, it was the only place that opened its doors during the civil rights to
Mm.
some of our civil rights leaders. And that's how he got his name. And it's just funny that you have this guy that literally was ready to give me hope in this moment,
Oh,
not knowing I'm calling to give him good news.
yes.
And he's like, I had 2 speeches ready for you. I was waiting.
He knew, but I think that's another testament to the relationships that you build with other people and the fact that you wanted to follow up. right?
Hmm.
I think that that's something that we take for granted, that we have these moments of connection with somebody that maybe lead us down a path, even if it wasn't like the whole way, but they open the door or a window or point to an entry for us. And then you follow up with them and you let them know, hey, this is what's happening now, or this is what's changed for me. And that's, I think, a show of gratitude that so many of us sometimes take for granted. Like, oh, well, that they weren't the one that actually gave me the job. Like, no, actually, they're the ones that pointed us in the direction, that supported us, or at least had an inkling that they saw potential in us, and having had that little mention may have contributed subconsciously to you going, oh yeah, I'll meet your mom. Oh yeah, I'll check out whatever position. Um, I want to go back to something because you've highlighted already not only that you're a member of NABA, the National Association for Black Accountants, right? Yeah, Blacks in
Yes.
Accounting.
National Association of Black Accountants.
Black accountants, got it. You graduated from Tuskegee, right? Historically Black colleges and college, and you also belong to the National Association for Minorities in Hospitality. So we can already start to see, at least with those three organizations that you've been part of, that there's something really special about having an ethnic representation or cultural representation surrounding you, right, in this particular field. Talk to us a little bit about what's that meant to you, and what is it about that particular affiliation that's made a difference in how you move in the world?
Representation really does matter, and I think people lose sight of that. So working in Latin America, typically everybody associates that with, Mexico or Central or South America, and people lose sight of the Caribbeans. So
Mm.
walking into a room, for me, I didn't realize it at the time, but I became that person that people were like, "Oh, I have a chance. I could be Shawn. He's the different one." But for
He's the
me,
different
he's
one.
the different one. But I'll be honest, for me, I didn't even think I could go to college until I saw somebody who looked like me who did it. So,
Hmm.
in my family, my mother's the baby of 12 kids.
Mm.
And college was not something that was very much talked about amongst a lot of people in my family. My mother said, "You're gonna go, we're gonna figure it out." But my mother really didn't even understand, she didn't understand what that meant. To the
Mm.
point that when it was time for me to go to college, I saved up some money because I was ready. I was like, here we go. And I get to my first day of class and I'm like, so when are you guys issuing books? Hold on, I gotta buy these?
Yeah.
I thought I just showed up at the bookstore and you just gave me what I needed. It was that much of
Sure.
my family had no insight on what it really took to go to college and be in
Mm.
college and make it through it. So representation does matter to the point that if it wasn't for Dr. Jennifer Watson in high school, I
Mm.
would have never known college was real. So
Mm.
very short black lady, and I do mean short. Maybe I'm just tall. Short black lady,
You're six
who
three.
yeah. I mean, the only mistake I will say she ever made is she went to A&T. I went to Tuskegee. Everybody makes mistakes. I can only say that about her. No one else can say that. No, but she actually showed me what life can be like that is very different if you just decide to try something new and go forward. So, I say she is probably credited with the fact that, one, I went to a historically black college. But two, I saw that it was something that was really real. It wasn't only made for rich people.
Mm.
It wasn't made for people whose families did it before. She was the one who said, you can literally do whatever you want and you can break whatever cycles you've ever seen in life.
Mhm. That's interesting because I think we do hear often that representation matters for a lot of reasons, right? It becomes kind of like a morality thing. But I think what you're pointing to is that you had a vision already, or your family had a vision for you. But the fact that you were able to confirm and validate that vision by having a lived experience, seeing someone, meeting someone, speaking to someone, right, that demonstrated you a path that you could follow. That's where it all kind of starts to crystallize. So it's not just like
Absolutely.
I don't hear, because sometimes it can come off from people like this is a righteousness thing, like, okay, representation matters. We must have representation. But what you're talking about is more personal. It's like a validation of who it is that you wanted to be in the world, and seeing an example of that was important and crucial. I know in my family, my parents didn't go to college necessarily, but immigrant families, when we come to the States, you're like, of course you're going to get an education. What are you talking about? There's no question. In fact, I wanted to go to the junior college because that's where a couple of my friends were going. And I'm like, I just want to hang out with my friends from high school. And my dad was like, oh no, you're going to University of Alabama with your brother. And I'm like, Why? I mean, I don't even know what I'm going to study. He's like, you're going to 4-year school, no question. Neither of them had ever gone to a 4-year school. They had no idea, but my brother somehow had made it a couple of years. He's like, he'll show you the ropes. And in fact, both my parents enrolled in college after. So my dad went and got his master's degree eventually. My mom also enrolled in college to go into get paralegal because after my brother and I completed our education, they were also inspired. So it also works backwards, right? They do owe me. Hmm, interesting. I'll
Hmm.
talk to my mom about that later.
Send her an
Like my
invoice.
dad. I'll send her an invoice, both of
Just send
them.
her an invoice.
Yeah. But I think to your point, this idea of seeing other people, and you mentioned this when you went to NABA, right? So tell us a little bit about once you've had that validations, once you've seen someone that also represents something that you want and something you're moving towards, what happens then? So you go and you see there's a lot of people who look like you, and then what?
So, one of the things that has always stuck out in my head is there's a guy named Eugene Vance. So remember, we talked about my thesis and my doctoral program
We
about,
haven't talked about it yet,
oh,
so
we
let's do
haven't,
it.
yes.
No, not
So we'll get
yet.
to that. So mentorship really does matter. And having those people who really pose certain questions to you in life matter. So Eugene Vance is one of those people who has passed away. But one of the things he used to ask is, so what's the plan? And funny enough, when it comes to Eugene Vance, to this day, I'm still mad at him in life because I would always say, "Well, I just give me the answer. Nobody has time for this learning moment. Can you just tell me what 2 plus 2 is what? Just can we get to the answer? I don't need what the plan is today." But it reminds me of that constantly of like, what's the plan? So
Mm,
to your point about representation, you see something, then it becomes okay, it's now possible. So I'm
yeah.
not trying to prove a hypothesis anymore. It's
Mm,
been proven already. I
yeah.
honestly just now need to redo the experiment.
Mm,
So now what's the plan? And sometimes it comes down to asking
mm,
a person a question of just finding out. So how did you get here?
yeah.
What did you do? And for me, that point became full circle in Brazil. So
Mm,
interestingly enough, I take this job. We're in 2021, maybe 22. I get down to Brazil, I get to Rio, and I'm meeting with people on the team. For most people, they don't know Brazil was one of the last places that abolished slavery, and it still deals with a lot of colorism.
mm,
So I get to Brazil, and I never forget, I'm sitting down and I meet this young lady, curly hair, big hair, and I introduce myself, and she's like, "Oh, I know who you are." She sits down. So how did you get here? I took a plane, and then I got in this car, and then the car pulled in front of the hotel, and then all of you were outside in your suits and saw me, and then you shook my hand. Remember? That was like 2 hours ago. That's how I got here. And she's like, "No, how did you get here?" And I was like, "Oh,
this
what the
world.
plan was." And
Yeah.
we start going through it. And then all of a sudden I was like, so this is what he meant this whole time. Like,
Mm,
ask somebody the plan. What's your plan? And it came full circle for me in that moment of what the plan is. Because that day, funny enough, I'll never forget that day because it was probably one of the most emotional days I've ever had when I sat on the plane and I was in the airplane and I'm on the plane because now I have a situation where I have one person ask me what the plan is, how'd you get there, and they walk out. Another person literally like looked at me and asked for a hug at the end. And that's when
mm,
I found out how much representation really does matter. I found out in most organizations there aren't a lot of black managers in Brazil.
mm,
I'm grateful to say that since I took this job in Brazil, I've actually promoted 2 black assistant directors of finance. That's never happened there. But it comes back to that, representation matters. Sometimes you have to see what you could become in life. And sometimes you got to ask that plan. Like, so what's the
mm.
plan? How you get there?
Wow.
So you go from you see it to now
Mm,
you have to develop a plan to achieve it because you have no more excuses saying, this can't happen for me. It's never happened for me. I've never seen anybody ever did this. So I'm always reminded of the story of like Noah and Noah's Ark. And I remember somebody told me when I was in Sunday school, and it always becomes relevant of Noah got there and he told everybody, so God told me to build a boat, put 2 animals in it. And thinking about it in like my imagination, there had to be one guy who was like, my mama ain't never seen no rain. What you mean build a boat this big? You don't your and that's what happens in life. You have people like, ain't nobody ever seen that. My mama ain't never seen that. You just making up stuff. And then you finally like you come up with a plan and make it happen.
Mm.
So I'm always reminded that when you're the first, you always have to deal with my mama ain't never seen that. But when somebody actually did it, now it's just
Yeah,
so it is feasible. Now I
it's
just have to have a
feasible.
plan to make it happen for me.
Got it. All right, so see it, believe it, achieve it.
Basically.
Might be a t-shirt. It could be a really good t-shirt. Um,
Copy pending.
yes. I want to come back to, so you mentioned Eugene. In my conversations with you, you refer to, and I'm going to say this in a way that's going to sound very provocative, uh, but I think you know where I'm going with this. You've mentioned Eugene, you've mentioned Chris, you mentioned the gentleman that had you shift how you look at your work-life balance. And these are all people who have passed away, right? So you get a lot of advice and mentorship from people who are no longer here physically present. From you get your mentorship from the dead. So talk to us a little bit about how you get mentored from beyond.
So one of the okay, let's take a step back.
Yes.
I have always hung out with a much older demographic.
Mm.
So at 25, I'm hanging out with 55, 65 year olds.
Hmm.
And it's just always been that way my whole life. So even as a young child, my grandmother had 12 kids. My mother
Hmm.
was the baby of 12. And in my family, there are a lot of women and not many men. So she had 11 girls and one boy. That should tell you just the interesting household.
Wow. Yeah.
Grandchildren wise, probably 40, 50 of us, and not many boys. In the age group I grew up in, there were no grandsons other than me. So I hung out a lot with my grandmother after my grandfather passed. So
Mm.
thus why I hung out with just a lot of older people. So sometimes I'll say something that sounds like it's from 1950 because it probably
It
is.
was from that person.
It probably
Okay.
is. She probably came up with it. But to that same point, I ended up kind of just staying and hanging out with older people because I've learned you can learn so much by just sitting down and shutting up and listening.
Yeah.
Too often we always feel like we have to add something to the conversation. And no, you honestly can have some of the best mentorship by just being in the room. It does not
That's
require
true.
them to be incredibly educated.
Yeah.
Life experience is sometimes worth so much more in those situations. So to your point of, you get a lot of mentorship from the dead. Well, it's really, I paid attention for a really long time.
Yeah.
And like I would say, I saved it. And one day I realized I needed to download this and print it out and use it for a moment.
Mm.
So those really how I got to this point of, mentorship from people who unfortunately aren't here anymore. I spent a lot of time just listening.
So now, but this is not just a, hey, I had a conversation with this person that one time. You continuously refer back to lessons and you talk about that very openly. And you talk about them as if they're still here with you. So t tell us a little bit about what that's like. What that's like, not only downloading what they shared with you, but continuing to bring it back, continuing to give them credit for it, like that process.
I mean, well, it wasn't my idea, so I'm not gonna have any copyright infringement. I'm gonna give them credit for it,
Okay.
but they still continue to thrive and live as long as I talk about the great things they told me
Mm.
and helped others develop. People are
Mm.
forgotten when you stop talking about them. And
Mm.
what I find interesting, especially with families, one person in the family would always remember you. But we rarely talk about the friends you've impacted your entire life
Yeah.
and the ones who will still remember something about you. I think probably when I learned that in my life of what I've done for others is it was later on that somebody told me, I ran into somebody who knows you. And as a result of running into this person that knows you, they said, I remember him when he was a manager. He was the only person that said good morning every day. And I
Mm.
appreciate you every night.
Mm.
And I didn't think anything of this fact. I'm like, okay, great, wonderful. But it's just something that I had no idea being kind and just a human meant so much to others in life.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, especially if there's a contrast, right? That's not what they're getting every day. It's funny you say that because I think when I think back to there, I met a lot of people, back in my high day, I was doing all sorts of workshops and training like you, traveling different parts of the country, different parts of the world. And met a lot of people. And I'm sorry, some of those people might be watching this episode. Like, I don't always remember after, I visited once, maybe 5 years ago, and then I didn't see that person ever again. But we do have we have moments of impact with people. There are people that I'm sure that we have passed by and something that they said, something we overheard, some way they showed up that impacted us and how we show up consequently, right? They will never know. They may never
Mhm.
know that fact. But I think to your point, keeping them alive by giving them credit for that one, hey, I saw this one person or had this one conversation that shifted everything. In fact, it's funny. I ran into when we were in Baha Mar, the Grand Hyatt Baha Mar recently for a finance event, and I ran into the director of rooms, Ryan. And I remember Ryan when he used to be a manager in one of the hotels here in Dallas, and he's like, Valerie, help! Oh my gosh! And I'm like, oh my goodness! I recognize his face. I couldn't quite place him in all of the hotels, but when he told me, I'm like, oh yes, that's right, Dallas. And he said, I still remember you talking about your airline experiences. And I'm not gonna trash any airlines here, so I'm not gonna say the name. But I would always start, when I did services, some kind of service training, I would talk about some of the experiences I had because I was on planes a lot. And had particularly challenging experiences with a particular airline. I would use them as an example. He said, to this day, 10 years later, like 12 years later, I still remember what you said. And I go into that airline and I pay attention to this and that. And I'm like, oh man. So the impact that people that we have on people, we have to also be take responsibility for. But I think from your point of view, this idea that when you have some wisdom that's been downloaded to you, no matter if the person is still living or not, that part of our job is to help them to not only to relive the lesson ourselves, but also to get to inspire other people with the same lessons, right? To share the message. They may never have met the people that you've met. I never met them, but you always talk about them so much. They are like a third person in the conversations that we have because you refer to them. Let's because you I've also noticed you like to shout out people, right? You give your little shout outs already today. So shout out a couple of the people that have passed and what lessons you got from them, just so that we could also benefit.
Wow. This actually just proves how much I hang out with older people. So, the
Just some
first one that comes to
highlights. You don't have to
mind.
go down the roster, but
The first one I would say actually is a Chris Horth. So Chris Horth was when I met him, the VP of Finance for corporate, and in my capacity in Latin America, worked with him a lot. And one day he said something that has stuck with me. He said, "There is nothing that happens at Hyatt that will ever make me lose sleep."
Hmm.
And too often, especially in hospitality, we just keep going and going, and it was just embedded in us. And
Hmm.
I've actually gotten to the point that I remember that. And every morning I wake up and I go for a walk. I pretend like I'm running. So, like, I might get if I see a
Or
group
you
of
just
people
move
that are
your
about to
arms while you're
turn,
walking.
yeah, I'll act like I'm running. But then once they go past me, I'm gonna stop and just go back to my regular walks. Don't judge my life. Hey, it's about perception, not
Of a
reality. In
show.
my
I
mind,
got
I'm
it.
a marathon runner.
I
In
got it.
reality, I'm just a speed walker who's on purpose. That reminds me, there's nothing that happens at Hyatt that's actually gonna affect me going to sleep at night.
Yeah.
I think about her name was Sylvia Webster. So she's passed away. She was my payroll manager and kind of became my self-proclaimed grandmother.
Mm.
I was 25 in Dallas. I'll never forget my first day. I'm the assistant director of finance at this large hotel. And the director said, "Everybody introduce yourself." And her exact words to me was, "Baby, I'm retiring in 6 months. You don't even need to learn my name." Exact words to me. Never forget that. We actually ended up going to church together. I was an usher on the usher board with her, but she always reminded me of like the presence I carried every day
Mm.
and the impact I had when I walked in a room. So I always remember that when I go in a room of as tall as I am, people will see me long before they ever hear me. So
Yeah.
remember just who you are. A lady by the name of Mary Wilson. I actually had a mailroom clerk.
Okay.
Literally, I was the assistant director of finance and I managed a mailroom. I had a whole mailroom clerk. Mary Wilson probably taught me more about leadership than anything I ever learned in my life.
Mm.
She told me how to just navigate things, not by lessons, but how she did it every single day. But
Mm.
she had kind of that Chris spirit of there's nothing that's gonna happen here today that is literally gonna make me lose sleep tonight. And then, Eugene Vance. I think Eugene Vance was really interesting and the fact that he was actually the city manager in Dallas. So it's at a time where, we're talking the 70s, 80s, really 60s, 70s, a black man really in charge of all these city buildings, and he's running stuff. And he said that's when he really was talking about that plan. You got to have a plan because literally every day something's going to happen and you really don't know what you're going to face every day. So every day you got to have a plan.
Mm,
He's honest. He was very honest in the fact that your plan may not come to fruition, and the moment you get
yeah.
to work, it's going to change. But if your plan was to accomplish one thing, just because life went sideways, still find a way to accomplish your plan. Or at minimum, learn to pivot. Don't change the
Mm.
goal. Sometimes you got to change the plan.
Gotta change the, yeah, or the way you get to the plan. Wow. Well, shout out to them, right? To Chris, Sylvia, to Mary, and Eugene. Excellent, excellent. I'm sure they're so proud. And I think what I hear also in the download that you got from them is so much perspective about time. There's a perspective that they've shared about time, what's important now, what to prioritize, how to prioritize it, um, when to move, when to stop, when to slow down, that sort of thing. So I think we all get what we need to, and there's so many people. I like you. I find myself surrounded by people who are older also. I remember in this exercise, I did this personal development workshop, and we had an exercise where we thought about our life 10 years from now. And I started crying. I was like, why am I weeping? And people were like, are you okay? And I thought about, oh my gosh, I have so many people currently in my life who are in their 70s and 80s. And 10 years from now, they may not be around anymore. But these are like very strong connections that I have with them. And just thinking about, wow, the take advantage of it now. I've like you've had some people who've passed, and recently telling my mom about this gentleman who I met at a in the how did we meet? Francis Conrad, shout out to Francis, passed away about 3 years ago. And he and his wife were at an event, an entrepreneurship event. We happened to just sit next to each other, and when we had to do some exercise, had to turn to each other to do the exercise and exchange business cards. And he became such a lovely mentor for me for years. We would have Zoom calls throughout the entire pandemic and have really meaningful conversations. And funny enough, I was giving my mom advice that Francis had given me like 4 years ago. Oh yeah, this guy Francis told me XYZ, and I'm like, oh wow. So people do mentor beyond the grave, so to speak, right? That there's more beyond what we have in these moments. Um, I want to pivot a little bit, talking about pivoting, because you obviously nurtured those messages by talking about them, sharing them like you did here. But let's talk about present time and people who are here and living. How do you keep those connections, especially in your life where you're meeting so many people at the same time? Your travels take you all over the place for short periods of time or long periods of time. What do you do to keep those connections, connecting?
Um, it's really interesting that you say that because I have some friends that truly know. Like Shawn will kind of call us back when, he kind of
Mm,
gets to it. They just understand it. But I think it's really essential that it has to be a two-way street. If you have one friend that's always reaching out to one person and it's never going the other way, that's probably not an investment you should make. But the people who have consistently always pushed and kind of did those things with me are the ones that literally I will always find time. No, it could be on my walk on a Saturday morning.
mm.
I'm always going to find time to talk to them. So to
Like
that
your
point, I
walk
think of
run.
one person specifically, Robert Clay. Sorry, Dr. Robert Clay. To this day, I'm still mad at him, and I'll explain why.
Uh-huh.
Dr. Robert Clay is my fraternity brother, and I literally see him at Conclave. I'll catch up with him every now and again when I'm in Chicago. He is I honestly forgot what university he's teaching at, but he's one of the people that probably inspires me the most, and I probably talk to him the absolute least. And I'll tell
Hmm.
you why I'm mad at him because if you get a really good friend, they will push you past what you ever think you could accomplish or dream of. He is the reason I actually got an MBA and I'm actively pursuing a doctorate. So that's why every time I do homework, I think I've cussed him out more in my head than anybody on earth, but he is probably the person who has pushed me to more and greater than I ever thought was tangible in my life. But what that
Mm.
requires is you just have to make a conscious effort to call people and connect with them.
Yeah.
See them when you get around. Sometimes it's when you get around to it at certain conventions. or certain meetings that you see them, but it's about really just establishing that connection. But a good friendship does not require me to talk to you every day. A good
Mm,
friendship, you can pick up exactly where you left off.
yep.
So my line brother,
What does
literally,
that mean? I don't know if
so,
people know line.
sorry, I'm a member of a fraternity, the greatest fraternity this side of heaven, Phi Beta Sigma Fraternity Incorporated. I'm a life member, but the person that I actually I went through the membership intake process with, me and him talk on a regular basis. But if you ever see us together, especially at Tuskegee, at homecoming, or at an event, you would probably think we were 21 again. We literally pick up where we left off every single moment. It's like time has never stopped, but
Yeah.
time also has never progressed. We pick right back up where we left off, and those are some of the friendships people lose sight of. Do you have a friend that literally nothing has ever changed in life?
Yeah.
You two are still the same two people you were when you were 20, 21, on your journey to becoming Sigmas together and going through graduating Tuskegee together.
Yeah.
Those are some of the best friendships you'll ever have in your entire life. And it amazes me how many people lose sight of it. So I remember people talking about, well, I outgrew them. I was like, well, are you sure? Because there's an aspect about that life
Yeah.
that you're sure you want to outgrow that.
Mm.
Because sometimes I honestly don't want to grow up. I want to be a Toys R Us kid. There's a million toys at Toys R Us that I could play
You're
with.
dating yourself now, Shawn.
I'm okay with it. Take it for what it is. I, you listen and you don't judge. Let's be clear.
This is interesting. This idea of outgrowing some friendships. I think there is a place and time when we evolve,
Mhm.
either spiritually, mentally, emotionally, that may not connect anymore at the level that we would love to or had connected with people. But I think what you're pointing out here with your friend, with your line brother, is this idea that the you're both evolving, right? Maybe in different directions, but the fact that both of you are evolving and that connection stays strong. You don't lose anything by evolving in your different
Mhm.
ways. But let's break it down a little bit for people because I think those kind of relationships, like you said, that have lasted for many years are not just because you can hang out at homecoming or an event, right? What is it that you get from that relationship with what's his name again? Your
So
line
Robert Clay,
was it
you,
Robert? Dr. Robert is your
Dr.
line
Robert
buyer?
Clay,
Okay.
you need somebody who's willing to pour into you as much as you're willing to pour into them.
Mm-hmm.
Friendship is a two-way street, not just kind of one directional.
Yeah.
And if you have a friend that literally pours into you, it's one of the most amazing things you'll ever have. And those are the connections that keep you really moving long term in life.
Yeah.
You guys can take two different paths, you can take two different growth models, you can decide you want to go different ways. But a friend that will pour into you of, hey, I'm praying for you, I'm thinking about you. Hey, if you ever need anything, I'm still here. I know the journey, I know the road is hard right now, but you will
Yeah.
get through it. Sometimes that is one of the best friends you have, which is why I said some friendships you really don't outgrow. Like you may take two different paths, but
Yeah.
those core things that made you friends to begin with will last a lifetime. We may
Mhm.
not like the same music or the same food. We may go politically different directions,
Yeah.
but it doesn't change the fact that I still care about my friend.
There you go. I think that's the key right there. You said the depth is not this stuff about whether your opinions match up or not, if your lifestyle matches up, is whether your values match up. And if they
Hmm.
can be present and hold space, if you can both hold space and time to express thoughts and feelings about things that are important to you, and somebody that challenges you that much, that push you as much as Dr. Robert did for you, is clearly because he cares about you, right? It's not because there was some
Absolutely.
envy or because there was some kind of, ego about like competition or anything like that. It's really because somebody that sees the best in you or sees a potential for the best.
Absolutely.
Interesting. Okay. Well, now that you are in a position where people are looking to you, right? You mentioned it several times already, people are looking to you. You're the person in the room that they're like, how'd you get here? What's your plan? Right?
Hmm.
How do you mentor? How do you how do you how do you become the kind of person that people talk about you once you're gone?
Um, So let's take a step back. I started this. I'm currently working on my doctorate, so still mad at Dr. Clay for that. Working on my doctorate, and as I've explored, what would I study as a thesis? it keeps coming back to mentorship and how
Mhm.
significant it is. And when I think about it as especially a person of color, mentorship is very significant because it's one of those things that reminds you of like, oh, it is possible. And I think what I've discovered in doing research and looking at various things, mentorship programs really don't help. Those formal mentorships, it does lead to
Mm,
some aspect of it, but a formal mentorship program does not yield the results. But informal mentorship has so many different aspects that people forget about, and they tend to yield better results long term because they're organic. They're based on genuine relationship and caring. It's not that we got a sign because we both like the color blue. Is we both have to what we talk about. We both have similar values,
yeah.
and it really helps grow that. So I think what I've seen a lot, especially now, is I'm more about the informal mentorship. If you
Mm,
want to connect with me, connect. My calendar is always up to date. If you want to set up a call with me, set up a call.
yeah.
Let's have conversation. But I'm going to ask what your plan is.
Yeah.
If you don't have one, I'm going to give you IDP, an individual development plan, and say you need to fill this out. And let's talk about what your plan is, and let's
Mm,
work on it. And funny enough, I've actually taken a couple things out of your book when I now review IDPs with people.
mm,
Do me a favor. I want you to write down everything you just like and things you don't like. Just let's write it down.
mm.
Okay, now that we have that, let's kind of craft what you want to be when you grow up based on what you like.
Yeah.
Because if you like it, technically you'll never work another day in your life.
There you go.
So that's what I really kind of strive for is how do I help develop some of those like informal mentorships that just kind of help people grow and develop. I have zero intention on, to your point, of being the person that is quoted years later and people remember me long term. I just want to help people be better. Like my goal isn't to be, honored or win awards. It's just I want to do for others what people did for me. So I want to literally just give back. However, my mother was 16 when she had me. No one in my family ever went to college. If certain people didn't say, you know what, I see something in you, I can't promise where I would be today. So
Yeah.
my goal in life is literally just to help people.
Mm,
So if you ever get the chance to go to Tuskegee University, I strongly urge you to do so. The campus is phenomenal. It is absolutely beautiful. But my favorite part of Tuskegee University is when you actually first pull into the campus past the Lincoln Gates. You see the Booker T. Washington statue. So in the statue, you literally have a slave kneel down, and there's like this big kind of cape veil over him, and Booker T. Washington is standing over him, pulling it up, and it's really lifting the veil of ignorance. And
mm,
that resonates with me. And when I was an undergrad in Tuskegee, I'm like, it's a big statue in the middle of the square. And as I've left and I've gotten older, and we had to read a book called Up from Slavery, which is really kind of his, I want to say autobiography, but his biography. I actually really understand it more and more as an adult than I did when I was actually a student in freshman orientation and had to read it. That literally is that whole how do we lift the veil? How do we help others? How do we pull
yeah.
somebody else up? And like this is not about the conversation between, the fundamental discrepancies between E.B. Du Bois, W.E.B. Du Bois, and Booker T. Washington because they had like different philosophies, but both of them really had the same like mantras. We just want to help
Yeah.
people be better in life. They just had two
Yeah.
different paths.
Mm. This is such an interesting perspective, right? Because what's driving you to help other people or the way you connect with other people is not because you want to achieve a certain result, right? It sounds like this is a way for you to really fulfill the vision and the I guess the vision is the only word that comes to mind. The vision of your parents, the vision of your elders, the vision of all these other people who have paved the path either for you or for those around you. And I think this is interesting too, from the perspective of it's it's not always you mentioned the differences between the formal and informal mentorship. I've been at the source of creating formal mentoring programs. And what I'm getting now from this conversation too is that, man, if we approach mentoring programs like speed dating, right? Where rather than being assigned someone because it on paper or their resume or whatever looks like yours or looks like it would lead to yours or whatever, but they really did it because you had a vibe check basically with the individuals.
Yes.
It might go a little bit further. everybody would benefit from mentorship regardless, but I think from the approach you're talking about could be a lot less, um, a lot more deep depth. And the image that comes to mind, just recently started playing with this idea, and I'd love to get your take on it. This, how you may have seen this image of an iceberg, right? And how the iceberg is only a percentage of the iceberg is actually shown above the water. The greatest bulk of the mass of the iceberg is below the water surface, right? Below the surface. And in this image I've seen is the very tippy top of the iceberg. It's kind of like the results that you receive, right? Achievement. The middle part of that iceberg out of the ocean is the behaviors. The surface level of the iceberg is all about like opinions and impressions. Below the surface, though, you're talking about thoughts, beliefs, feelings, and then core values. And everything that you've talked about so far, you keep diving into beliefs, feelings, and core values and how you connect with people, the fact that helping is important, keeping the people who have passed alive in your conversation. Like all of those things keep coming down to that below the surface. And I'm wondering, in a place where there's so much, the veil is to be lifted in a lot of different areas of life, right? There's a lot of unemployment for some people right now, massive layoffs. There's a lot of restructuring. There's huge impacts. Corporations are having huge impact on the livelihoods of so many people. And we can talk about that, right? Results, layoffs, behaviors. Now people are looking for jobs, applying for everything, contacting friends and family network, right? Impressions, opinions about the job market and what's available and what is not, if people are doing it right or not. Um, if we go below the surface and thinking about what we believe about ourselves, what we believe that's true and possible from others and humanity, how we feel about those things, and go back to our values, all of this to say, how, when you think about mentorship and the way you're approaching it in your doctorate program, if people going through all of this turmoil right now in the job market and their career, the opportunities that they have or limited career opportunities, how do they go below the surface when people are just kind of in survival mode, right? What would be your approach or your advice or your mentoring to someone who was uncertain about their future, but that could stay connected and locked in like you are right now?
That is a really good question.
And it took a while to get there, but that's really
That's a
what I
really,
wanted to ask.
that's a really, really good question. So I want to say it was January or February. I'm in a meeting at the hub in Chicago, our corporate office. And the first thing I told everybody is I've been in school a long time. And it wasn't until I got into my doctoral program I discovered that I've been doing research wrong my whole life.
Hmm.
Because one thing we do is we solve for the symptom and we never solve for the problem.
Hey.
We never figure out, okay, yes, you may have fixed what's on the outside, but did you actually fix it? Because it may come again. Because
Mm-hmm.
typically to fix a problem requires you to tear up a lot of stuff to
Yeah.
get down there. So I like to think of a room. I can make it look pretty and it still not be clean. But to really clean a room, you are going to tear this thing apart. Stuff is going to be in the hallway. It's going to look a hot mess before it looks good.
Mm-hmm.
When you're going through that much turmoil in life, I think you got to go back to the plan and just remember that part of like, we're not solving for the symptom. We're trying to actually fix the problem. So if I want to now make an impact, I need to actually understand like, well, what am I actually solving for? What is my North Star? What am I really trying to achieve? And I think if you keep going back to that, it is the most frustrating thing ever, I promise
Mm.
you, to keep going back and asking the question over and over again. I was actually on a corporate call, funny enough, and somebody was really mad at me because I kept posing something over and over. And it was like, they really just kind of, I don't want to say had outbursts, but really like, why do you keep saying that? Because we're not answering the question. We're
Mm.
saying a lot of words, but we have not gotten to the actual question.
Yeah.
So I'm going to keep asking until we get to the point and we kind of keep our North Star because we may solve for the wrong thing long term.
Mm.
And if you take that and use it in your personal life, it actually helps of what am I really trying to fix? What am I trying to accomplish? What is the actual goal?
Hmm.
So it's not the symptom, it's the problem. Let's get to the problem. That took me a long time to learn in life. But now that I've gotten there, it is quite frustrating. But I've seen better results because I keep asking, well, what's the actual problem? What are we truly trying to solve for? I don't want to solve for the symptom. I want to fix the actual problem. Because I also don't want to come back and deal with this again either.
Again, yes. But how do you distinguish the two? I think that's probably why this is a bit hard, right? You just gave the example of a room. If you really wanted to clean a room, you could take all the furniture out and strip it down to bare bones and clean. But you can make it look pretty. But sometimes we, especially when we're in survival mode, we only have the energy to make things look pretty, right? To update the resume, to make a couple of emails here and there, right? So how do you, in when you're talking about building those true mentoring relationships that could potentially launch you or open doors for you, how do you distinguish and discern what's a signal or a symptom versus the actual problem or goal?
So first, you have to stop and really just ask the question. So if I solve for this, does this produce something else?
Give me an
And it's like
example.
peeling back the onion. Okay. So I was working on a project recently when we were talking about this concept of task force.
Okay.
And we realized that we don't have enough people to do task force. And so it was like, okay, so if we actually take over managing the division, we solve for it and we deploy it correctly. But then what we discovered was, okay, we don't deploy task force correctly because it's based on who calls first and not based on triage of who needs it the most.
Mm.
Okay, so we're going to build this division and do this. Well, why do we need task force anyway? Oh, because we have this many openings. Okay, so well, how many openings have we had over this period of time? Okay, we've had this many openings. Why are we having such a hard time hiring people? And it just kind of, you keep asking questions and going and going.
Mm.
And then all of a sudden you found out we actually just don't recruit directors of finance well. We don't actually sort. That's the actual issue. Task force has nothing to do with it. We just don't recruit well. That and when we got to that point,
Wow.
it was like, oh,
Oh.
so we now need to change this. Maybe we need to probably change the job description, change how we're
Yes.
actually looking at this. We need to partner better with our HR partners to
Yes.
understand what we're looking for. Have we
Yes.
talked to the GMs to understand what the owner really wants? This had nothing to do with task force. The root cause was this.
Wow.
And so I think that's the problem. I could have easily stopped that we found a way to make task force work differently.
Mm.
But that didn't solve the
That wasn't the
problem.
problem. That wasn't the
I
goal.
solved the symptom. The
Yeah.
real problem was we have to change the way we recruit and change the way we bring people on. We had to change that.
Yeah.
And that had nothing to do with the problem that was presented to me.
Right.
We had to
Oh,
change perceptions.
this is so good. Okay, so I wanted just to refine a few terms for people who may not be part of the
Okay.
hospitality world. But the whole idea of task force is to help shore up and support hotels that might be opening. They may not have all the structure in place, or the
Mhm.
structure is quite unstable or new. So you bring some more senior or some seasoned folks, or just hands on deck to help support that structure as it's being built. So that's just a little
Yes.
parentheses. But what you're pointing to is you went through a process with this group of people who were trying to identify, like, how do we get this fix that we usually apply in these situations to be the best fix or to be the more timely fix? And then that took you from, like, well, maybe it's the timing of when we apply the fix. We're like, actually, why do we even have a fix to begin with? So then you go beyond that and think about, well, the reason is because we don't have the strongest people there, or they don't have the bandwidth. Well, then it absolutely changes who you need to hire, at least for this period of time. You need somebody that's strong. You need somebody that's structured. You can't be promoting somebody that's brand new into a situation that's not very stable yet, because
Mhm.
everything will fall on them too. And so yeah, it's quite simple in a way. Like, it makes so much logic sense, but it sounds like you're really diagnosing in a way that helps people lead them to, okay, let's go with the origin story. We're talking about 101 here. We're not talking about the version 7.0 that we've already been
Exactly.
working with. Fascinating. Huh. Okay. All right. This is good. And I think part of it too is that I think for anyone that's listening right now, thinking of rebuilding their own future and their career, to like go back to the 101, like why did I even get into this field to begin with? Like what's important to me about it? The world is changing so rapidly, and I know that we see the results of AI. We see companies that are making all sorts of changes. We see and hear all kinds of opinions about it. And that seems to, there's so much of it that we can just stay at the surface and talk about it and think about it and forward articles and see online all kinds of updates. But if we could just take a moment, like you said, just pause and go, okay, wait, what is it that I got into this industry about? Like, what is it that's important to me at this point in my life? What is it that I'm hoping to solve for? What is it? Is it a financial thing that I need? Is it a purpose that I'm looking for? Is it connections with other people? And continue to dive into this down below the surface. And I think that's where the mentorship is often missed, because if we connect with mentorship just above the surface, we miss it. We don't get the download, right? We don't get the download that is sustainable over time. We get the, hey, I had that job once. Here's what you need to do, interview for this, do that, fill this out this way. But you don't get the, hey, so what is it that you're here to do? You don't get the Dr. Robert conversation from a mentor that is only talking about the stuff in the surface, right? So
Absolutely.
fascinating. Oh man, I know we can talk forever about things, but as we're winding down, Shawn, anything coming up for you that you think would be helpful for anyone listening about how to identify a mentor, how to keep the mentorship advice alive, or how to continue to lift the veil for other people?
I think two things come to mind. So I'll be very honest. Confession is good for the soul, it's just bad for the reputation. I am a Disney kid. I love it in all facets. I love the movies, I love the parks.
Yeah.
But in the most recent Disney movie, The Lion King Mustafa,
Mm-hmm.
one of my favorite moments is Rafiki is walking down and they're talking trash as normally. And he reminds them of this African proverb. And it's a cool little song. I'm not gonna sing it. But if you want to go fast, go alone. But if you want to go far, you go together. And I think that's one of the first steps. You got to realize that's what mentorship is. It's not about going fast, it's about going far.
Hmm.
So you got to go with somebody. Nobody really can do all this by themselves. I think the second thing I would add is if you really want to find a mentor, find somebody who genuinely cares about where you're going.
Yeah.
Whether it's you are part of an organization, you're part of a program, you have a like goal and a like mind. Find somebody who actually wants to help push you to success because they see
Mm.
what the vision is. And sometimes it's hard, and sometimes the person may not even be in your industry. It may not be an accountant. It might be somebody in HR or sales. What you're looking for is somebody who genuinely has kind of the same image and the same mindset that pushes you forward. You don't want two of the same people by any means. Don't find your clone,
Yeah.
but somebody who at least looks at things in terms of the goal the same way. And
Mm.
they're going to help navigate you in some ways of you're going to hear some of that. Look, I'm not telling you what to do, but if I were you, you might hear that a few times, but they're honestly going to be the best advocate for you. Is find somebody, one who's been where you're going,
Yeah.
or somebody who you've seen go through some things that or skills that you want to learn. Mentorships, like I was talking about friendships, like good friendships last. Mentorships truly do evolve.
Mm.
Like the mentor you need today may not be the mentor you need tomorrow.
That's true.
The person that helps you today may not be able to help you get past tomorrow. So I think of like coaches for basketball or coaches, the Olympic coaches and so forth. The basketball coach you had in, early on is not going to be the basketball coach you have in middle school or high school or
Yeah.
college or the pros. You're
Yeah.
going to have to evolve as your
Yeah.
skills change because that person may not be able to help move you.
Yeah.
So also understanding when that person has hit like the wall and kind of said, you know what, I think I'm not the person who can help you because good mentors will lead you to the next person as well.
Mm.
So something most people don't know about me. I actually had a hip replacement when I was 29.
Mm,
And I'll never forget going to a surgeon, and he said the sign of a really, really good surgeon is to know when they've gotten to their limitations. And
okay.
you're it. I need you to go see this person. And he
Mm,
literally referred me to somebody completely different. And
mm,
at first I was a little like, "Well, that was kind of weird." And as I've grown in my career, I was like, man, he's
yeah.
right. The sign of a really good mentor is to know, like, you know what? I cannot help you get past today. You
Yeah.
need a better coach. You need a better mentor. You need that. And I think the last point I will say is sometimes you also have to have a coach and do some work on yourself. Mentorship is good for helping you to kind of guide in your plan, but sometimes you need a coach along the process. Um, I was fortunate enough that I actually, as my birthday present to myself, I got a coach.
Mm,
I will tell you the way I got my coach is I wanted somebody who did not know a ton about me, who's not going to have some level of empathy towards me, but enough that they were going to push me and drive me in a direction. And I can tell you, my coach was absolutely positively amazing. And as you can see by the goofy smile right now, yes, Valerie was my coach.
Goofy, not
um,
goofy, just a knowing smile. It was like more of a Mona Lisa smile.
yeah, okay. No, but it was one of those things that I'll never forget how the coaching started. This is not, trust me, this was not an advertisement. She had no
No,
idea I was gonna say this is
I
why you
had no
got the
idea.
crazy smile. Um, it was a moment we were talking about something with the development program and arranging it, and she looked at me, you looked at me and said, "You okay?" You know what? I think you just need to talk to somebody, like set up a session. So we had one, and I'll never forget. You were like, "Well, this is if you want to keep going," and I did not do it for a while. And then you got an email on my birthday saying
Mm,
you're going to be my birthday present to myself because I also recognize that I've gone very far, but if I want to go past this point, I
yeah,
also have to do work on myself. So while I have mentors who told me a lot of great things, there are some parts of the plan you have to do, and you have to make some investments in yourself. So
yeah.
you like I think I tell all the people like you were my birthday present to myself one year
Thank,
of I want to do something different. So
thank
I need
you.
to invest in me.
Hmm. Well, I receive it. I receive the compliment for sure, and I think it kind of goes back to what you were saying about Rafiki and the Lion King Mufasa. And if you want to go fast, go alone. Actually, I think the little caveat, yeah, you want to go alone, but you want to go with the right support system, right? You want to get the support system to help shore people up so that you
Mhm.
can go fast. Because sometimes I've gone fast and I've been as slow as molasses because I don't know what I'm doing. I'm stuck. I don't like it. It's miserable. It's lonely, whatever. And so surrounding myself with the right circle of people has helped me go fast alone. And then go together. You also want to surround yourself with the right people that you're not having to push, pull, convince, defend, protect yourself. I mean, you're really surrounded by people who all lift each other up. So I'm happy to be part of your circle, Shawn. Thank you so much for this conversation. And I think the impact that you also have on other people, the role model that you are, the hearkening back to the messages of people that have supported you, and you keep them alive in your conversations, in the wisdom that you share with other people. You're kind of folksy, so that it kind of works for you.
Absolutely.
And then the idea of being able to be seen, to validate for people that there's a path and there's a plan, right? That all those things are important. And I think, even when things seem very dire and dark, I've had some of the best outcomes come from the darkest time in my career. In fact, I was laid off from Hyatt. Actually, I mean, in all transparency, I was laid off from Hyatt in 2017. But no, it was the most beautiful experience to think back about all the wonderful people that I've connected to, the knowledge that I gained, the best work that I've ever done in my life. It provided so much that I'm so happy to be able to pay it forward in whatever measure I get to, association with you and others in the company too. So, and I'm eager to have other people experience that's not the end of the story, right? It's not the end of the story when something changes in our work environment or our career or our industry starts to come apart in some ways. Not the end of the story. Connect ourselves with the right people, and we'll get a chance to validate and support and challenge and ultimately just care for people so they can be their best. Brought to you by Hyatt. Oh man, thank you so much, Shawn. It's been so fun to have you on the podcast.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for having me.
Excellent. Those of you who tuned into this episode, we appreciate you. So grateful for this. Make sure that you stay tuned for the next one and have a wonderful rest of the day, everybody. Thanks for joining me on this episode of The Circle of Hope. Don't forget to subscribe, follow, and share with someone in your circle. And if you're curious about the upcoming book, visit valeriehope.com for updates and extras. Until then, stay connected.